Hi, I'm FIDE Master Livy Cherbulenko, and in this series I explore the typical mistakes of people rated anywhere between 1000 and 2000. This is a first reaction, no engine analysis of a chess.com game played between 1266 versus 1215. Let's start. Let's see, so e4, e5, classical opening, knight f3, white develops the knight, attacks the pawn, knight c6, developing the knight and defending the pawn, bishop b5. This is called the Ruy Lopez or the Spanish game. White simply develops the bishop and prepares to castle, also puts pressure on the knight, which guards the pawn. d6, not the main move would be a6, and then the point is that if white takes the knight, and then black takes with the d pawn and white takes the e5 pawn, there's queen d4, double attack against the knight and the pawn. The knight moves and black simply regains the pawn back with check actually, and white cannot castle. Has to queen e2, black just takes, king takes, and black is fine. Yes, black has two double pawns, but he also has the pair of two bishops, and white's king cannot castle, so black is fine. So that would be the point of a6, and usually white doesn't take. The main move is like bishop a4, and then black goes knight f6, castles, bishop e7, rook e1, b5 at some point, bishop b3, for example. Here d6 black can play, and the game goes on and on. But a6 is the main line. d6, I think this is called the Steinitz variation. Let's see, so white plays d4. Yeah, makes sense. We want to always play in the center. If we can, advance 2 pawns in the center, if not, at least one here. Black played passively with d6, so white can just push d4 in the center and occupy the center. So d4, bishop d7, another move would be to take, and then bishop d7, guarding the knight. That also would have made sense. But okay, black decided to play bishop d7, which also makes sense. Bishop takes c6. Yeah, not so sure about this. I guess white thought that he wins the e5 pawn, but the problem is that after bishop c6, let's say takes, black can just take on e4, or first take on e5, and then after knight e5, bishop takes e4, or immediately take on e4. So that's the problem with bishop c6. I think white could have just like castled, and then maybe let's say knight f6, knight c3, simply develop, and then depending on the situation, either take later on e4, let's say first like rook e1, and then let's say we go like bishop e7, rook e1. Now already bishop c6 might be a threat, because the knight and the rook is guarding the e4 pawn, and now already bishop c6d might be a threat. Or depending on the situation, we might also play d5 and then trade the bishops and gain more space, right? Have an advanced pawn on d5. Also that made sense. So I think in these kind of positions, the best strategy is to simply develop, finish the development, and be flexible, and decide whether to go with d5 or d, depending on your opponent's moves. So we shouldn't rush, like, you know, immediately with d5 or d. Just like develop, don't rush. Usually, the one who gives up first the tension gives up the advantage. You know, so you wanna be, you wanna like keep the tension, and at some point your opponent, you know, won't be able to keep the tension. He'll release it first, and usually the one who releases the tension first loses the edge. So that's why, yeah, bishop c6, not so sure about. But okay, let's see. So bishop takes c6, makes sense. d5. Yeah, this is not good at all. This is not good at all. Now black can just play bishop d7, followed potentially by f5. When the center is closed, like here, usually we want to attack on the side and want to make side pawn breaks. A side pawn break, right? Side pawn break. And then, depending on the situation, black can either take on e4 and destroy white's pawn center, or black can decide to push it further to f4, so f5, f4, and then g5, g4 eventually, and start a pawn storm, right? So this is not good at all. I think, okay, here white should have played either d, right? Let's say bishop e4, maybe we can play, I don't know, knight c3, attack the bishop, let's say bishop f3, queen f3, d, then we just take the pawn on b7. And now black has this disconnected pawns. Queen c6 check, next is a threat. Black cannot play queen d7 because queen takes a8, and white actually should have an advantage here. Obviously black is not obliged to give up a pawn on c6. We can just play like c6 and with interesting play, but white should be fine here. Maybe I can just take the pawn on d6, for example. Or black could have maybe like taken first on e5, say queen takes d8, rook takes d8. Now white can take on e5, bishop e4. Actually, this is not so great, because now black has double attack. So we cannot defend both pawns at the same time. So maybe here, instead of that, maybe just, let's say, knight bd2. Not knight to c3, because of bishop b4, pinning the knight. But knight bd2, perhaps. And now bishop b4, then we have pawn c3. Pawn c3. Again, this is not so great for white. Black can just play like f6. Black has 2 bishops. Also, this bishop is pinned. We can't move this knight because we lose the e4 pawn, but if we don't move this knight, the bishop is not pinned, but blocked, I mean. So, yeah, I think black has an advantage here. Plus, black also has the d file. Black is better developed. So, yeah, black should have an advantage. So, yeah, maybe here, maybe just knight c3 then. Yeah, that's probably the best, I guess. Just knight c3 guarding the pawn. Yeah. But okay, let's see. So d5, yeah, the whole sequence is very bad to take the knight and d5. If you want to play d5, way better to just play immediately, and then we move a knight somewhere and then take the bishop, right? Then we exchange bishop versus bishop, not bishop versus knight. So yeah, this is a big mistake. What white did here? Bishop b5, huh? Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, because now I can just play like a4 or knight c3 or b3 c4 with tempo. Yeah, bishop b5 is weird. I think black should have played bishop d7, a nice diagonal, supports f5, followed by knight f6, pressure on e4, or like I said, f4 eventually. f5, f4, and then g5, g4, pawn storm. And yeah, black already is better here. But okay, bishop b5 is weird. So white decided to play a4, makes sense. Another move would have been b3, with idea of c, because now we cannot castle, right? So b3, c4, and then castle. B3, c4, and then castle short, and so bishop b4, b5 is just a waste of time. But okay, white decided to play a4, alright, bishop a6, b4, so white simply wanna win the bishop, okay. b5. Not so sure about this b5 move, you know. Yeah, I think this might be a mistake, b5. I think black should have played b6, you know, and then if b5, simply bishop either b7 or most likely c8, because on b7 is stuck. Although it looks more active, but it's actually less active because it's stuck against the pawn chain. But bishop c8, again, when the bishop goes through d7 and supports f5. And I think black would have been fine. But b5 I'm not so sure about. I think this is way too weakening. So I'm curious how white played. ab, yeah, makes sense. Another move would be knight c3, you know, putting pressure on the pawn. And then if white takes, if black takes, we could just like take with the rook, let's say, put pressure on the bishop. This pawn is weak. Let's say they move a bishop somewhere, then we can play bishop e3, put pressure here, perhaps queen a1 next, put even more pressure. Would have been interesting. And another move would have been c4, I was thinking about. Now the point is that if white takes, so we simply have more like, we gain space, right? So if they take, we just play queen a4. Double attack against the king and the bishop, and we win the game, so we cannot do it. But if bc, then we can just play like, let's say, I don't know, knight c3, for example, and then eventually we will win this pawn back. We'll play like b5, and then the bishop will move, and then we'll play like knight d2, knight c. So for example, let's say knight f6, we can play like, let's say, I don't know, b5, bishop c8, knight d2, for example, yeah, and then knight takes c4. Let's say bishop e7, knight takes c4, and we have here like more space. Can play potentially knight a5, knight c6 is a weak square for black. Maybe can push our pawns, you know. Looks not bad actually. So I think I like c4. I like c4, yeah, quite a lot here, and then here. Knight c3 is not the only move, obviously. But the point is that we'll get back this pawn at some point with some initiative on the queen side and more space. So yeah, but okay, let's see. White took bishop b5, all right. Knight a3. The point is we want to push c4 to gain more space, but to also block this diagonal so that we can castle, right? But let's see. Knight a3. All right, knight a3, c6. Okay. Yeah, c6 I'm not so sure about. I think this is I think black should have played bishop d7, c4, and then maybe, let's say, I don't know, f5, followed by knight f6, right? So white here has pawn majority, you know, like in the center and the queen side, and black has pawn majority more toward the king side, right? So it's like complicated play. I still think black is fine. But yeah, bishop d7 I think was the best move. Keeping the bishop c6 cannot be a good move, because now I can just like take the bishop. Yeah, knight b5 makes sense. I mean, actually, I think there's a better move now if you think about it. What about c4? Yeah, actually c4 is probably the best. c4 attacking the bishop. Black has to move the bishop away. Bishop c6, and now we take, followed by b5. Now it is simply up a pawn, and next b5, attacking the bishop, defending the pawn. d5 is also a weak square, so potentially we can reroute the knight via b1, c3 through d5, and white has a big advantage, I think. Yeah, let's say they play some move, knight f6, and just b5, let's say, bishop here. Now this pawn is attacked. We may play, let's say, I don't know, queen c2, for example, followed by knight b1, c3, d5, maybe pin the knight first, bishop g5. We have a forever passed pawn on c6, which is guarded. a7 is also weak, so potentially we can play bishop a7, put pressure on a7. Yeah, white is basically completely winning. Yeah, there's also queen a4, by the way, double attack against the bishop, and the pawn is also completely winning. So yeah, actually c4 was the best move. So then c6, yeah, again, is a huge mistake. Bishop d7 was the correct move. And then after c4, f5, like we have discussed earlier. Yeah, so then knight b5 actually is a mistake. An opportunity cost. White should have played c4. But alright, knight takes b5, cb. Castles, well, makes sense. I was looking at this pawn is quite weak. So my first instinct was like queen d3 or queen e2, putting pressure on it. Let's say, let's say queen d3, right, putting pressure now. The thing is that black cannot simply play like a move like a6. That's actually a mistake. We should always look at tactics, you know. There's rook takes a6, and if rook takes a6, queen b5 check. Let's say queen d7, and then queen takes a6. White has won a pawn, and simply pushes the pawn further and wins the game. So you have to always look at tactics, at loose pieces, you know, at like squares that, how to say, that like, is like a common point between, you know, his king and his other pieces. Like in this case, right, that would be b5, right? b5 is like a common square between his rook and his king, right? So you should always look at this kind of stuff, right? Squares that like there's a check against the king and perhaps attacks another piece, because there's always some tactics about it. So black cannot just play a6. We cannot play rook b8 because we just take the a7 pawn. So we have to play like a move like, let's say, I don't know, queen b6. Well, by queen b6, we just go bishop e3 with tempo, attacking the queen, you know, putting pressure on a7. Now maybe we can just castle, and then eventually we can, you know, double up on the a file, play rook a5, maybe rook a1, perhaps c4, right? Open up the game. So this looks quite bad for black. So maybe queen d7 might be the best, but even so, I don't know. This looks not so good. Why can't you play like bishop b3? Castle short, and then play perhaps rook a6, again rook f2 a1, put pressure on the pawn, maybe c4 at some point. Again, white has a clear development advantage. So yeah, I think queen d3 or queen e2 was the correct move, but castles is also very good. Alright, knight f6, queen d3, okay, a6, again like we said, a6, white just goes rook takes a6, rook takes a6, queen takes b5. Queen d7, alright, bishop g5. Yeah, but makes sense attacking the knight. Except black can just like play bishop e7 and defend easily. I mean, another move would be maybe bishop e3. I don't know, bishop e3, and then the goal is to play rook a6 and rook f2 a1, putting pressure on a7, stopping a6, by the way, right? That's why rook a6, and also c6 is the weak square, so potentially can like remaneuver the rook to c6. But alright, bishop g5, bishop e7 makes sense. Bishop takes f6. Why the rush? I don't understand. The knight isn't going anywhere anyway. So instead of bishop f6, I think rook a6 is logical. Again, disconnecting the a7 pawn from the b5 pawn so that they cannot play a6 and guard it. You know, and if black tries to attack it, now we just play rook f2 a1. And this is like very good structure for white, very bad for black. Pawns are disconnected, b5 is weak, a7 is weak. The rook is tied through the defense of a pawn, as is the queen. c6 is a weak square, by the way, so potentially we can play rook c6. Great outpost. This pawn is weak on b5, so we can play like rook a5, put even more pressure on the pawn. Eventually we can also play c4. Maybe we can put the bishop, bring it back to e3 and attack a7. This would have been big advantage for white, so I don't understand the rush with bishop f6. The knight isn't going anywhere anyway. Like, if you want to take on f6, at least wait for h6. The chances are black would have played h6 anyway, and then play bishop f6, right? Let black at least waste one tempo with h6 and then take. There is no reason to take it right now. I think bishop f6 is a mistake. But okay, bishop f6, all right. c4. Yeah, not so sure about that. I think white could have played rook a6 and rook a1, like I said, disconnecting the two pawns first, and then eventually white can push c4. Rook a5 might also be interesting, but let's see, here. Yeah, maybe rook a5. Maybe not the best, although here we could push c4, takes, and now actually we cannot really defend this pawn. Let's say we just castle, here, takes, and let's say rook c8, we just go rook c6. And it's basically over, yeah. So, yeah, maybe rook a5 also would have worked. You know, like, the idea is that before we exchange this pawn, we should first exhaust our attacking opportunities, you know. We should first try to win the pawn, put pressure on it, make black, you know, make defensive moves, and after that, if we cannot put any more pressure on it, then we should, you know, play c4. But we should first pressure him and not just exchange it, okay? So that's, I think, a mistake. All right, so c4, takes, castles, makes sense. b5, thinking about queen c6. The point is that if black takes, we just take, and now we should have a big advantage, because then we just play b5, have a protected passed pawn. This is weak, the rook is passive, our rook is very active, we can put the rook behind. The d6 pawn is also weak, the d5 square is very weak, so potentially if we can reroute the knight to d5, it's over. So black can't really take the queen, and if they can, then our queen is pretty active. Also, by the way, attacks e7. So let's say we would play, I don't know, queen e7, then we can play rook f2 c1. The point being that we cannot play rook c8, because then we just take, check, and black has to play queen d8, after which we just take, and white is simply up a rook. So that would be the point, because if you start with b5 the way white started, the problem is that black can play rook c8. And then we cannot play queen c6. Then we cannot play queen, so that's why I was thinking, first queen c6, the queen, let's say, has to move, and then rook f2 c1. And now black can never play rook c8. And then we can play b5, I don't know, maybe reroute the knight somewhere, try better square, you know, maybe play queen c7, by the way, queen c7, you know, and dominate the 7th rank. Yeah, I think this was probably the best for white. Or another idea, by the way, would have been rook a6. Yeah, rook a6, and then rook f2 c8, let's say, then rook to c6. Again, right, with if we take, we can even like take dc, and again have a great passed pawn, and with big advantage. So c6 is a very weak square for black. This bishop is so bad, it's just a big pawn, can never defend this weak square. So I think white should have profited from that and put a piece, either a rook or a queen there. I think that is like one of black's biggest weaknesses. So we should always pay attention to the weak squares and put our pieces and exploit those weak squares, okay? So b5, I think, is a mistake. h6, complete waste of time. Black should have played first rook f2 c8, attack the queen, and after white moves the queen somewhere, then even if you want to create a window, which is like useful, right? But not h6. You don't want to put your pawn of the same color as your bishop. You want to play g6. Put always your pawns of the opposite color than your bishop. It also eventually might support f5. Black can like move the bishop away and play f5 with some counterplay in the center. So g6 would have made way more sense. Or there might be even some other stuff. Maybe let's say here, maybe some pressure against the pawn. Maybe rook a b8. I don't know. And then potentially rook c5, and start, you know, putting pressure on the b5 pawn. So yeah, h6 is very, very static. In these kind of positions, each move should be very dynamic. Each move should be piece play. right? Attack the queen, attack the pawn, you know, maneuver your bishop somewhere. Maybe bishop d8, bishop b6, by the way, would be interesting. Let's say here, and then bishop d8. It prepares f5, by the way, and also bishop b6, putting pressure on f2 and defending the a7 pawn. Also would have been interesting, you know. But it should be active piece play, you know, not just like wasting time with h6. So yeah, again, white can just play either queen c6 or rook a6, rook c6. Again, controlling this outpost. Rook a2, again, way too passive. Why not rook a6? It also puts pressure on d6. Let's say rook f2 c8, rook c6. And if black takes, we can just take, like, let's say here. And now we open up the d file. This pawn is weak. Open up this diagonal. The d5 square is weak, so we can potentially put a knight. This pawn now is also very weak, which is also, like, you know, blocked by the b5 pawn. We have this passer. It's basically completely winning. Basically, if you also like can put the knight on d5, you'll have a great knight versus a poor bishop on d5. So strategically, white is completely winning here. Yeah, just rook a6, and black cannot do anything. Or queen c6, like we have discussed, right? Queen c6. But maybe rook a6 even stronger in this case. Okay, rook a2, way too passive. Okay, so we can learn from this. Don't make passive moves. Always, you know, when you can move your piece, move it as forward as you can, as long as it's, you know, defended. Bishop d8, huh? That's interesting. He found this maneuver. Except actually it doesn't work right away. I think black should play first rook f2 c8, queen d3, and then bishop d8. So let's see. So rook f2 c8 here, and then bishop d8, right? We can play, but not immediately bishop d8, because I realized that after bishop d8, white actually has a good move, queen c6, attacking the queen and the rook. If the rook moves, we take the queen. If the queen moves, we just take the rook. And if the queen takes, again, we just go back to that great position that we have discussed, where this pawn is weak, d5 square is weak, this pawn is weak, past protected pawn. Basically, white is completely winning. So yeah, I think queen c6 was the best move. Yeah, with big advantage, basically. Yeah, I think queen c6 and white would have won very easily. So again, this is like for the optimum time. White did not profit from this opportunity. He played what? Rook f2 a1. Yeah, not so sure about it. Bishop b6. Now they play, but now it's too late, because now the rooks are connected. See, so now already the queen can just like go to e7, because now the rook is no longer undefended, because the bishop is on b6, so the rooks are connected. So it's a bit too late. Okay, queen e7, that's a right decision. Rook a6. What, wanna take on b6? Well, black can just like move a rook to like see it. Wait a bit. And actually, I think white's queen is trapped. Wait a bit. Rook c8 now is a huge threat. So white should have like put the queen back to like c4, rook c8, and then queen d3. Of course, white already has completely lost his initiative. Already black might have some initiative next, like with f5 maybe, and white cannot take because of, you know, maybe e4, although there's queen e2 and black can take because the queen is hanging. Maybe it's not so simple. But still, now black has the c file, the a7 pawn is guarded, the bishop is great on this diagonal. We can prepare it with like g6 f5, you know, or queen d7 f5. You know, and if the f file opens up, then black will have pressure on f2 with his rook and his bishop. So already black takes over the initiative. But yeah, still white should have played rook, queen c4. Yeah, rook a6 I think is just a losing move. See, so this is another case of not applying prophylactic thinking. We should not just think about ourselves, but also about our opponent. Okay, what is his next threat? What is his next move? What is the purpose of his last move? What does he want to do? If I were black, how would they play, you know? And clearly white did not apply here prophylaxis. Rook a6, huge blunder. What? Queen e8. Oh my god. I mean, black should have just played rook c8. The queen is just trapped. I mean, yeah, white can play like rook b6, probably the best. And now if they take the queen, we take here, and then we have what? A rook and a knight against a queen. I mean, I guess it's still playable, but we should be objectively worse probably, because black can play like f5 or queen b7, put pressure here. The queen should be stronger, but that's like the least of the evil. And if we take here, we just take the queen, and maybe we might have some compensation, though it's unclear if we have enough. But still, black should have played rook a2 c8, obviously. Queen d8, I don't understand. while you go back, disconnect the rooks. That's obviously a big mistake. Okay, knight d2, so white wants to play knight c4, put pressure on the bishop and the d6 pawn, but makes sense. The problem is rook c8. So I don't know, maybe white should have played rook c1 to protect against rook c8, I'm thinking, or queen c4, maybe the easiest, and then bring it back, and then play knight d2, knight c4, bring the queen first back, and then play knight d2 and knight c4. But okay, they played here. Wait a bit, actually, again, our queen gets trapped. Again, rook c8, queen b7, rook c7, and the queen gets trapped. For the second time. Knight d2 actually is a losing move, yeah. That's why, like I said, queen c4, rook c8, queen, let's say, d3, protecting against f5, and then knight d2, knight c4, putting pressure here. That would have been more or less fine for white. But yeah, knight d2 is just a losing move, and again, black misses the win in 2 moves. So f5, okay, knight c4, fe. Well, again here, rook to c8. Now the point is not only like rook c7, which we already know wins the queen, but also even simply to take the knight. So black missed both ideas, to take the knight and rook c7. But yeah, rook c8 is completely and if queen d6, I mean just rook takes c4. Right, that would be the second point. Not just rook c7, but taking the knight. So yeah, fe, big mistake, huge mistake in fact. Now not only doesn't black win the game, but I think white can just like take the bishop and should be winning, because now black cannot take now we cannot take the pawn, because we just take and we win material, right? And we are up a queen. So you see, black went from completely winning to completely losing in 1 move, which shows that we should not, you know, celebrate too soon and like relax. Oh, I'm completely winning, and just relax and throw the game like this. So, you know, you're safe. There's a saying, you're safe when you're home. In chess, it's like you're safe when you won the game. When you have won the game, that's when you're safe. You're safe when you're home. You're safe when you have won the game. Okay? Until then, you're not safe. Even 1 move before you win the game, you're not safe. Anything can happen. Okay, so queen f6, attacking the f2 pawn, rook a2, guarding the f2 pawn, makes sense. ab would, but I mean, okay, the rook was attacked anyway, and knight d7 was coming with double attack. Black is just completely lost. But I think maybe black could have tried like the last trick, you know, like e3, and then if white takes, then queen f1, checkmate, right? This would have been like the last trick. Obviously, white is not obliged to take. White can even like just take like this rook, and after this king f1. But then maybe black can try some tricks. They can play like, for example, queen f5, threatening here check. You know, not only is it double attack against the king and the rook, but it's also simply a check, and when if the king moves, then f1 queen, and so now white has to guard against queen b1. So white should be winning. Also queen d3 is a threat, but still white needs to be careful. You know, white should find a move like queen c2, for example, to prevent both queen b1 check and queen d3 check. But at least black could have tried, you know. It was worth a try, I think. But yeah, ab just loses completely immediately. Rook 8 makes sense. We just take, check here. Queen b6, okay, queen f4. Black tries his last chance, queen c1 checkmate, yeah. But queen e3, good move. Queen f7. b6, well, queen e4 check actually would have been fine. Yeah, simply queen e3 check. I mean e4 check, but okay, b6 they played. Yeah, I don't understand why not take the pawn. Why give, you know, queen d5? Simply play check, and after g6, b6, threatening rook a7, pinning the queen, and the queen guards the d5 pawn. So, but okay, let's see, b6 here, check. g6, rook a7, okay, yeah, and black resigned. Okay, I hope you have enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.